All right. Welcome to another edition of Shabbat Lounge. This is Matt.
And Jake here.
And Jake, we appreciate people stopping by. And what is it that we want them to do?
You need to go to Sabbath Lounge and check out all of our wares, which are actually...
we have merchandise.
Not wares. In fact, they are blogs, posts, and videos, and Torah portions, all that jazz. All the things that you've come to expect if you've been following us for any time. So go to sabbathlounge.com and you can click on those tabs. Specifically, the Torah portions tab is good because it has them all lined out there for you, and you can follow along with that.
Yeah, we suggest that you read those Torah portions and do that before you listen to anything else. So, but we appreciate you stopping by. Appreciate your time to being on the channel. And Jake, we have something special today. We've been doing a bunch of interviews over the course of the year, and this will be in a playlist called Interviews. And so we've got a long list of people we've been talking to. And so today we've got somebody new.
That's right. We just wanted to welcome Wilwaukee to the program. And he's a fella on TikTok that we've been kind of scoping about and following his things. And so we just wanted to get him on the show and discuss some Torah topics with him. So, Hi, Will.
Hey, shalom, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, we're honored that you gave up some time to be with us today. We appreciate that a lot, and we've been a fan for a while, and we've laughed at some things. We've shooken our heads at a few things, but we like what you do.
We've cried right along with you. So.
Yeah, thank you.
No, we like what you do and like your sense of humor and like your approach. And you've done debates, you've done all kinds of things. Tell us a little bit about kind of what, if somebody is new to you, what should they do?
I want people to know that, so yeah, I'm a Torah observer. Kind of given that title. I'm 30 years old. When people come across my page, I want them to find a lot of interesting information. And I want them to also know that I am not a scholar. I never went to college. I never did any of that stuff. I am a plumber, and I currently just have my own company. So this is all the things that you guys see on my TikTok in the meantime. And so if you do see something of me where it's like, wow, like, I can't believe this guy knows how to do this or this and that, these are all things that you guys can do too. I am not anyone special with a doctorate degree, master degree. I'm your average person who knows this stuff, and you can know it too. It just takes you sitting down, reading, disciplining yourself.
Yeah. No, that's well said too. So Jake and I also don't claim to be anything special in that regard, and nor do we think you have to. I think that there's been this air about intellectualism that is worshipped today in our society, and even amongst believers, people worship this idea and think you have to go to school and have XYZ behind your name before people can listen to you, and that's just not true. Fortunately for me, growing up, I grew up in West Texas and a farming community, and a lot of those old farmers were pretty wise, and they didn't go to school, but I heard them say lots of wise things, and especially the guys that were in the church community I was involved in, and they knew a few things, and you're wise to listen to them. So, but yeah, you don't have to have a degree behind your name.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that. Well, I can read and comprehend the English language, so that opens the door to a lot of things.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's great. Well, I did have a few questions, and one of them is, could you briefly describe kind of how you got to Torah Walk? Most of us, kind of were normie Christians or something at some point. I assume you have some kind of story like that.
Yeah, it's, it's nothing really crazy or anything. So I really struggled with being happy. When I was younger, I really liked to just have promiscuous relationship with women, and I loved getting drunk. That was my thing. But it never fully made me happy until one day I went to my parents were going to church. I just went with them on that particular Sunday, and there was a guy. So I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and there was a guy from the Plain Dealer, and he was there, and he was just talking about this message, and it was a very basic message. It was just basically like Jesus loves you. Like it was very simple. I don't know why I broke down and cried. I tried really hard to hold it in to the point where I just went to my parents' car. I sat in there. They were like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm fine." When I went home, I prayed and I said, "Okay, I'm going to stop what I'm doing. If you're out there, please just look down on me. Show me some grace. Give me some knowledge. Just give me something. I will follow you, but please let this change my life." Now, my dad was a worship leader at a bigger church, so he was kind of up there as like head honcho, kind of under the pastor. And my mom always did Bible studies or Sunday school, excuse me. So I've always heard the Bible. I've always, this and that, every Christmas, we're reading the story of Jesus and stuff like that. Yeah. And I'm reading the Bible for the first time. I'm like early 20s, right? And I get to, towards the end of the 3rd chapter of Genesis. I did not know that when they were kicked out of the garden, everyone knows the story. Adam and Eve get kicked out of the garden. There's 2 cherubs at the entrance blocking it so no one can enter with the flaming sword going back and forth. I read that about 5 times because a flaming sword, well, that sounds imaginary. That sounds, like that didn't actually happen in the Bible. I read it. I checked other Bible versions. They all said the same thing. I was so amazed. And I'm like, I've heard this in my entire life. And I've never read this. This is not even a full 3 chapters in the book of Genesis. Bereshit in the very beginning of the Bible, the 66 book canon, whatever. And I continued reading. And then I find out that Jacob didn't have 12 kids. He had 13. He had a girl named Dinah. I'm learning all these things. Part of me got really angry because why wasn't I told about this? I'm a Christian. I've been telling everyone like, "Oh, what religion are you? A Catholic? I'm a Christian." Well, the holy book in my life, I didn't even know it. I just felt bamboozled by my pastors, by what they were saying. Eventually, as I'm continue reading through, I get to the book of Daniel. I'm like, "Oh, there's 12 chapters. Okay, there's 12 stories. Well, I know the lion's den story. I'm learning about the dream, the bear, the lion, the leopard. I'm learning about the tree dream. I'm learning about the writing on the wall. That's where the phrase comes from. Then towards the end, Michael's there. And I'm like, I don't know this. And towards the end, it was probably about 10 days before my 21st birthday. I told myself, I'm going to be Torah observant because reading these laws are here to benefit us. This isn't a burden. This isn't something evil or something to weigh us down with or anything like that. This is because we don't just worship a God. No, we worship a loving Father. That's what makes him different than any other false god out there. He is a loving Father. And just as a loving Father tells us and gives us commands to do something, to do it. And I realized this. So 10 days before my 21st birthday, all my friends wanted to go out and get drunk. No, guys, I need to know this and study this. My birthday was in August. So I'm 30 years old and 2 months. And so I've been Torah observant for a little over 9 years, and it's just been a blessing ever since.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing how you start reading and you're like, why did they leave out? Why in church do they leave out all these awesome stories? It's like there's so much they could be telling you about.
Yeah.
And it makes it exciting. And you're like, what? They could be, if they're interested in pew filling, they could be filling them, with truth instead of watered down stuff. But I don't know. It's kind of crazy.
It was funny because so I'm all tatted up underneath here. I'm all tatted up, and because tattoos are cool and girls like guys with tattoos. You know, it gives a little edginess to it. You know, hey, it is what it is. I'm going to be honest with you guys. And I remember my mom yelling at me like, it's in the Bible not to get tattoos. And I'm like, where? I don't know, but it's there. But when I actually read it through, I think it's like what Leviticus 21:19, I think it is. I'm like, you're right. I'm sorry.
Wow. Yeah, that is interesting too. You know how I grew up in church tradition that believed in no tattoos, and they would quote that, but you know they didn't have much regard for any other thing in the Torah, but they would bring out the convenient ones.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that works.
Yeah,
this one fits what we want to talk about right now, so we'll hit you with that.
Well, that's really an amazing story. You know that you realize that at a young age and a time of your life when people are easily losing their mind, doing crazy stuff. So that's amazing.
Yeah, I think another thing, and Matt talks about this a lot, is when is that prayer that you mentioned and how specific it was, and it kind of had an if then to it. And people are afraid to do that. I think in church, you're kind of raised not to have if then with Yah. And it's like, but that's how Gideon and the fleece worked, you know, that's what Jacob does in the wilderness. If you keep me in food and shelter, you'll be my Elohim. I'll be your servant. Right. So I think that's interesting.
It's very interesting, especially even in the Psalms. When you read it, it's almost like David is yelling at Yahweh, yelling at him in a way of like, you're the mighty God. You need to do this. You need to do that. You know,
because I'm just me. Yeah.
Right. And it's not many people realize like the struggle that we have. And I always try to tell people the story when, you know, Jacob wrestled with God, right? He got intimate with God. He wrestled with him. And this is how we are supposed to approach the Most High. We're supposed to be naked. We're supposed to show ourselves to him. And we're supposed to go back and forth. It's a relationship. Just as we go back and forth with our wife, we're supposed to go back and forth with God. If you're mad at God, let him know that you're upset. Let him know. He wants that communication. He doesn't want this generic, our Heavenly Father, great are you, bless this food, amen. No. God, I had this terrible day at work. This sucked. It was terrible. I felt like you weren't there. I felt alone and by myself. But that you are not that God. Please give me comfort. He wants something real.
Yeah, I think we put the weakness of human emotion to him and say, you know, he can't handle me being real with him, essentially. If that makes sense.
He's a dad. You know, I have a 3-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter, and I deal with his emotions right now. And he's raw with me. And I like it though, because I know he's being himself. And how much more than how much more than
being naked in the garden. Yeah.
Right. And then it's like, how much more than how I want my son to be towards me, how much more should I be to my father?
Yeah, that's good. He definitely is big enough to handle whatever we say. And I find that to be liberating too, especially if you talk to somebody that's atheistic or completely walked away from their faith. And when you're not, when you don't freak out about them saying something along those lines, they almost don't know what to do sometimes because they've had so many people freak out. Like, I can't believe you'd say that. And you know, God is big enough to handle those objections. You know, it's not the first time he's heard it, nor will it be the last. So that's good. The other question I wanted to ask you about is, you know, kind of how do you see your role in the, you know, I don't know what to call this thing, but there is kind of this Torah observant or Torah pursuant social media community. You know, kind of how do you see your role in this?
Well, you know, I'll be really shocked. You know, well, first, have you guys reaching out to me? I was very happy because I was like, wow, I've done something to grab the attention of Sabbath Lounge to what I do. You know, I just came to social media, I want to say in 2020. a lot of what I've been doing was I just was arguing with, pastors and stuff like that. And a lot of people knew what I argued, and they're like, "Hey, well, come to church. You got to ask my pastor this." Like it was kind of funny like that. And then I come on social media. And I think one thing with me is I'm loud and I don't bite my tongue. I'm that blue collar worker guy. I don't try to sugarcoat something. I'm just going to tell you how it is. And kind of like how I said earlier, I really want people in the Tour Observant movement to, I get said this a lot of time, and I'm not trying to boast of myself or anything, but a lot of people like my content, like my videos. Wow, Will, like, you do really good things. And like, wow, I can't wait to be on your level one day. And it's like, well, you can. If I'm plumbing 40 hours a week, and especially now that I own my own company, I'm gone sometimes 80 hours a week, and I can still do this. You can do this too. And I really want people to be inspired of that. If I can do this, I can have debates on YouTube. If I can make content, if I can have these discussions, what I know, you can know this too. And I really want people to see that this dumb plumber has some good points, has some good arguments. And I want people to, you don't have to agree everything with what I say, but use what I got and, go from there.
Yeah, that's great. And I would say one of the reasons why you have so many followers is probably because of your honesty and openness, that we get so tired of fake, the world is full of fake. I mean, just anywhere you look, it's especially social media, it's all fake. It's people putting on these happy faces and living this happy life. But it's all a lie. And but it's nice to see people who are real and honest and just are who they are, and we appreciate that about you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the to your point, how anyone can kind of get to that level. It's one of the things that we kind of realized when we came into this was how if I'm going to discuss this with, and we talked about this with Luke too, how, we have the answer sheet to the quiz, so everyone's looking at the same book. Everyone has the same access to the same answers. So it doesn't take someone special to be able to read and understand. And, and he even says, it's not too hard for you to understand. So, and he just reveals as you're ready for it. So as long as you keep up with it.
Yeah.
And then,
and I think Jake has a couple of questions.
Yeah. Let's see. I'll start with this one here. So one of the videos you did, I thought was pretty interesting. A couple of my questions are going to be on this topic, I think. But I see you go back and forth a lot with Trinitarian people. But one of the points you make is this difference between eternal and everlasting. So I just wanted to have you, for our audience, give a quick kind of synopsis of what that difference is and why that's important.
Right. So, us in the English, eternal and everlasting, they are very different. So eternal is no beginning, no end. Everlasting has a beginning, but has no end. And this is very important, especially when we look at Yeshua. So not every Torah agrees with me on this stance, and it's fine. It's I know every Christian disagrees with me because they get a little mad.
That's
but
a requirement almost. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hey, truth hurts. I don't know what to, I don't know. Go to someone else's channel if you don't, like my taste. Yeah. So the Hebrew word that's mostly being used is olam, when the Greek is aeonios. Now, in my intro debate that I had with Bible Inspired Truth on Alternate Media YouTube channel, I brought up some of the things showing the distinction. So in the Greek, we see multiple times, and I bring this up from like Matthew, Romans, all over, where it talks about us human beings. We will inherit eternal life, and other verses it actually says everlasting life. So I beg the question, is our life eternal? Well, no. If we will be given forever, like eternal, everlasting life. If it starts at some point, let's say Yeshua comes back, revelation happens, and we come with perfect bodies and we live, I believe we will live on earth or in heaven, whatever your belief is. We start there. That is a starting point. That's not forever. So the correct term is everlasting life. We will inherit everlasting life. It's not eternal. Now in Romans, it's in chapter 6, and the other one's in 16. I forgot which one is which, but it describes the Father, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, as being everlasting, and the other one is eternal. We know the Father is eternal because he has no beginning. So by calling the Father everlasting, that's grammatically incorrect. So I start off that to show the difference because it's the same word, aeonios, in the Greek. And for anyone out there, I believe it's like 165 or like 166 in the Strong's Concordance. There's no distinction. It just says aeonios, life. So it's either eternal or everlasting, but we distinguish it's everlasting. And then the Father is aeonios. Well, we know he's not everlasting, he's eternal. So we know the distinction. Now, when it refers to the Son, and this is where Christians get pissed off at me, but I'm sorry. A lot of people will use Proverbs 8:22 and refer to this as Yeshua. I have no problem doing this. Now, when we look at the Greek Septuagint, it talks about wisdom being brought forth, right? Or aeonios. And it's the same word that is used in, I want to say it's 1 Corinthians, I think 11:9, referring to men and women being created. So if they're going to use Proverbs 8:22, but say he was eternal, well, then that's a problem. I think you guys saw my one video where I was arguing with a Calvinist, and he brings up Micah 5:2. But even in the Strong's, it calls it everlasting, even though it's referring to Messiah. Even with, so there's another issue. The Orthodox Church, they believe in what's called monarchical Trinitarianism, where they believe that the Son was eternally generated. My problem with that is if we use all these little terms that are throughout the Bible, that Yeshua is either generated, brought forth, begotten, set up. These are all the result of an action. Something happened to where he is now. Whether he's directly from the Father, like if we have a drop of water and the water pulls itself out where it's the same drop of water, whatever illustration you want to give, something happened, Yeshua was the result. The word, the logos, the memra, however you want to define this. So it's very important to where in the Trinity, where people say that the Son is eternal, and they'll pull up quotes from the Church Father where they also mention this, but then they fail to realize that it's being translated from Greek. The aeonios there isn't distinguished. So when we have these words that describe something that is temporal, it's everlasting. It just is. Now, this doesn't mean that Yeshua's sacrifice was meaningless or there's nothing special about Yeshua, but it's just a fact there. So understanding the distinction, it makes the Bible, it brings it a little more to life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things that I ran into early on was maybe I'll just describe him the way the Bible describes him. How about that? How about I just describe him that way instead of whatever theological term you want to use to describe him? I'll say what he says about himself, and then I can't be wrong.
Yeah. And some of those terms, like you said, like that thing you just mentioned, monarchical. Is that what you said?
Monarchical.
Oh,
yeah.
Monarchical Trinitarianism.
I've never even heard of that, but it's like people just made up names. So we're gonna, we don't know what this is, but we're gonna say it's this, and it's gonna become this thing. And some dude just said he just made that up, and people run with it like a doctrine.
I was really happy. There was a few Orthodox guys that I was talking to about that, and I presented them the same issue, and they were honest with me, and I appreciated that, and they told me it's a mystery we just can't understand, but we know it's true. It's like, I appreciate that. I appreciate, but don't get mad at me though if I don't accept it. That's all I'm saying. Just don't get mad at me.
Well,
Yeah, that's kind of the other thing is we tend to use his ways are higher than our ways, and we just can't know all things like he does. And it's like, well, hang on, that's the end of the conversation. You know, that's not where you start. You start with trying to figure it out, and then once you've exhausted all your resources, then you can lean back on, well, you know, some things we can't really know.
yeah, you don't start there.
Right.
But, you know, especially like with the Trinity, you know, it is one of those things where I do acknowledge, you know, I'm a 2-dimensional being trying to describe this 4-dimensional concept. And so I'm limited, you know, in this current state to fully understand how some of these things work. One day we will totally understand it, but it is a hard thing. And he tried to put it in terms that we could understand. And, you know, especially with the Father and the Son, and, you know, that's mostly for our benefit. So we could kind of put some kind of framework around how does this work?
Right. I think even too, when we look at Second Esdras, I believe it's like chapter 4. Ezra is here trying to understand God. And what happens is the angel gives him 3 riddles, and he's not able to solve the riddles. And the angel goes, well, I gave you riddles on things that you have experienced, yet you can't explain it. So how can you understand God whom you have not experienced? So I'm not trying to be up here and say that, you know, God's easy to understand, like what's wrong with you guys, you know. But also I feel like if I'm going to say God is a giant pizza monster, and if we don't offer up mozzarella in our front yard every full moon, you know, something bad's going to happen to us. I have no proof. You just have to have faith. And I feel like that's pretty idiotic, you know, and not trying to sound rude or anything, but, and I feel like with this idea too, it has problems.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's fair.
So what would you say about, I don't know that I've heard this argument fleshed out before, but so we would be described as eternal then, or everlasting. We would be everlasting, right? Because you have a beginning, no end. But what would you say about, well, we have that spark of divinity that came from eternal. So there's an eternal level to even our being, right? If that makes any sense.
So no, and that argument has also been presented to me. The only problem that I view is, so let's say God is this fire, and he takes part of that fire and puts it on you now. When did that fire start? Did it have a starting point? You know what I mean? Because it has that starting point, it has to be everlasting.
Once it is put into you, now you're that eternal you're that everlasting instead of eternal being, even though you have an everlasting part to you, or an eternal part to you. See, now I'm mixing.
No, yeah, you're good. Because I feel like the only problem is Mormonism per se. Mormonism might present a problem because, you know, they believe that we all previously existed on Kolob or whatever, and then we came here and we just lost all of our memory. So if you believe in that, possibly eternal. I don't know too much about Mormons to completely throw that out there, but I feel like that's the only argument that could possibly hurt me. But I also really don't interact with Mormons.
Right. Yeah. Plus it all has to work together.
Right.
But yeah, I thought that was a great explanation. I don't think I'd ever thought about eternal versus everlasting. That's good. That's a good thing you found there.
Yeah. And then let's see, kind of in the same vein, at the beginning of Genesis, where it says, "Let us make man in our image," the us there, how would you describe that us? Because especially in terms of so that's a plural word, right? Us. But isn't there a plural authoritative that just it comes across as plural, but it's just for emphasis? Or can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, it's the same thing with Elohim, and it's the even not necessarily plurality, but even like wisdom that's even talked about in Proverbs 8, where it's in the feminine. A lot of people don't understand Hebrew, and you can't take Hebrew the same way that you take the English language. It's not going to work. So, for instance, there is I remember I don't remember the Hebrew word exactly. But yes, a lot of people will take that, let us make man in our own image. Yes, that's the person of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit all communicating with each other of how to create everything. Or a lot of Jews, some Jewish commentary will say that it was God talking to his divine counsel. But yes, to your point, the plurality doesn't necessarily mean literally plural. And I always bring up this example. So I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people who are familiar with Behemoth. Behemoth is, Behemoth and Leviathan. Leviathan's like, excuse me, king of the ocean animals, right? I believe it's mentioned 4 times. And then Behemoth is only mentioned once, and it's actually in Job. So,
Job, yep.
So yeah, Job, sorry, I was looking for it. 40:15. So look at Behemoth, which I made along with you, and which feeds on grass like an ox. And basically from 15 all the way down, it basically describes this giant type thing, which a lot of people say it's a hippopotamus. With the cedar tail, maybe it's a type of dinosaur. I don't know. But
I'm calling dinosaur.
I call it dinosaur. Brontosaurus, actually.
But so it's interesting. So this word in Hebrew only appears once throughout the entire Hebrew Bible. And so it's Strong's 930 for anyone that wants to look at it. And it's Behemoth, where it's the plurality of the word Behemoth. Behemoth literally just means like an ox or a cattle or a water ox. So when we have the plurality of Behemoth, it's literally oxes. But we see how Job is writing. He's not talking about many oxes or many cattle. He's talking about one, but it's in the plural because it's so magnificent. It's so powerful. It's so big. It's like, this is one thing you do not want to mess with. So the plurality here is being used to talk about how enormous this is. So to your point, absolutely, the plurality can be used to talk about the strength, the power, the glory. Because especially if we're talking about Yahweh, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, he is the God of gods, as it's described in Deuteronomy, Daniel, and Psalms. He is like the head honcho. So of course, some words in the Hebrew was going to be plural to describe him. It only makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good example, and I hadn't heard the call to Behemoth on that, so I think that's cool.
Yeah, because when you read that from 15 to the rest of 24, it's literally talking about one single animal, even though the original word is plural.
Yeah. Yep. And then I think too the idea that Messiah was there at the foundation of the planet, so it's possible it could be either, is kind of the thing, but it doesn't have to mean Trinity, essentially, is the point.
And so, and I think this is, one reason why I think a lot of people like me is kind of like how you guys were alluding to, was I am completely honest. It absolutely could be the Father talking to the Son, or it could be him talking to the divine council, or it can literally just be him talking about how powerful God is. Right. It's important for all of us to look at all angles of this instead of just saying Trinity. Yep, there it is. Yeah, and it's right there.
I think it gets dangerous when we start pretending we know for a fact a lot of things that you can't really know for a fact. When there's multiple rational, logical conclusions that could be drawn, to say for a fact, it just isn't realistic, I think, a lot of times.
Yeah. And
So
I
I
think,
think people need to be honest with themselves about what they do and don't know, or can and can't know.
yeah, and I think you should be leery if somebody comes across and like, I know this is true about some of these things. I'm like, I don't know.
Now, let's be honest. There are some things that are very
You can't
basic and
know.
very knowable.
And it's
Right.
very clear.
Well,
There's no debate. It's black and white.
it's it's even there was a young kid on a live, and he was arguing the Trinity. He goes to John 1:1, and it says at the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. So the Word's God, and there's only one God, so it has to be the Word. And we finished reading John. It's the Word, and I ask him, what are the 5 forms of Greek? He doesn't know. I ask him, why is one in the accusative, one's in the nominative? I don't know. Why does one say ton theon, the other says theos? I don't know. It's like, well, you really don't know that.
What is God? Yeah, what does that word even mean?
Yeah.
So he had a title. Great. You've just proved he had a title. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, is it my turn?
If you have questions that aren't the end, then
Yes,
go
I
ahead.
have a question.
Okay.
So I had a question about, we were talking about the Torah community a little bit, and what do you see is maybe the biggest issue that in the Torah social media world, what's the biggest issue that we're facing out there? Or do you see one?
I do. I think it's a lot of the people coming into Torah. A lot of the young people. So there is when a lot of these people come in with teachings that they just randomly find on the internet or something, and they run with it.
That's fact, right?
It does bother me a lot. So I get it. I think a lot of people, when they find out some things aren't true, like the Sabbath, heaven and hell, the Trinity, other things that the Bible doesn't necessarily agree with. I think what happens is they get angry, and then when they hear something like Christmas is pagan, they run with it, or Jesus is pagan, and then what happens is they'll go on the sites and they look it up, and they get fed a lot of misinformation. I'm not saying everything is necessarily false, but they almost come like a Torah terrorist, where then they'll read something, then if you don't wear your tzitzits, you're going to hell, or that's an unforgivable sin, and little things like that. So there's actually one guy, he's an author, he's no one really on social media. His name is Lou White, and I don't care for a lot of the stuff that he says. So for instance, he says, Yeshua, or like Isus, like how we have in the Greek, he believes that that's a pagan name because it sounds like Hail
like
Zeus.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And he'll bring that up. However, the what is it? The hail part in Greek is actually, what is it? It's halazi. So it's not even hail. This is what we call an equivocation fallacy. This has nothing to do with the word hail or praise Zeus. Because if it was, it would be halazi instead of just hail, how we sound in the English. It just sounds like it, so it must be it, which is completely wrong. And we have this person who writes these books, does these, and I know a lot of Torah observers who have his books. I have his books just so I can point out to other people this is incorrect. I really feel like, or they'll say the I just saw this one the other day. I had to talk to a sister in private about this, where the star, my wife is Jewish, by the way, just a little context. So she believes that the star of Remphan that's mentioned in the Bible is the Star of David, but it's actually not. And scholars have discussed this. It's an 8-point star. It is not the 6. Now, can the 6 be from pagan? Sure. I don't know. But it's not the star of Remphan. We do know this, and this is from many scholar sources. They have pulled up ancient texts that show this. but we'll have some random guy on the internet say one thing or the other, and a lot of people just run to them. I feel like people coming into the Torah observant movement really need to humble themselves, read the Torah, understand the Torah, understand there's a Masoretic text, there is a Septuagint, there is a Dead Sea Scroll, there is the Alexander Codex. Understand some of the original things. Then understand some of the traditions, but always go to a type of scholar source. Don't go to some weird website with a bunch of letters in it and numbers that someone just sends you, that you just go to or say, hey, look what I found. So I feel like to have a better idea of things is and not just running and hearing like Santa wears a red suit because he's actually Satan who lives in hell. If we mix up the letters of Satan, we get Santa. Could all that be true? Possibly. I think it's a bad argument though, but these are the types of things that you read online. So is it necessarily true?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you get a lot of the ear tickling. People find sources that kind of go with their preconceived notion and they run with it, and then they're like, "Yep, see, this says it." So, and I think it. So, so it's a source.
Yeah, I ran into a lady that she believed because she had seen it. Unfortunately, like on, was it Joe Rogan? Is that his name? Yeah, that's his name. And it was about Yeshua on the cross taking mushrooms to trip.
Oh yeah.
And
That's a Joe Rogan thing.
and she believed that, and I'm like, what? Who told you this? Where did you get this information? But you're right. People do run out, and I also think something else that people should do is you should go through the cycle, this Torah cycle, the reading cycle, maybe 2 or 3 times. Maybe as many 5 times. It takes some time. Understanding it maybe before you go out and immediately try to start teaching something, because like you said, you should be humble and you should take your time and be methodical before you just run after. And I think something else that we want to talk about too is being in a fellowship. And that's the nice thing about when you're in a fellowship with other believers. You can have some of these ideas and say, "Hey, Jake, what do you think about this?" And Jake's like, "What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's crazy, man."
And and then maybe you can flesh some of that out with another brother. It's part of discipleship. And you don't have to have like this formal program, but just normal conversations will kind of keep you in check. If you're getting off the rails a little bit, your brother's like, "Hey, let's look at this," and that's very helpful. But no, that's good advice.
Yeah, kind of like you were saying earlier about how anyone can do this if they put the effort in and are disciplined. That's what discipling is. If you're discipling, then you'll kind of hash some of this stuff out that's fringy. And so typically what we would say is, hey, look at what Paul did when he's struck. The first thing he does is he goes back to Sinai, and it's like, do that when you're new to this. Do that. Go back to Sinai, figure out what you're supposed to know, get to know Yahweh for real, and then go from there.
Yeah. And that's essence, what's said in Acts, where he says, go hear Moses preached in the synagogues, and they'll fill in the rest.
Yeah.
So
I saw. Oh, do you have any questions for us that you had teased?
Oh yeah.
All right. So, are you guys DeWalt or Milwaukee?
Grab it.
Well,
you gotta show
I am too poor for Milwaukee, and so I'm probably more DeWalt. But I'd like Milwaukee, and if I was made of money, I would buy Milwaukee.
I'm sorry though. You're DeWalt, because I'm gonna have to leave. I'll leave.
Wait, if that didn't get you, I have Ryobis, so
it's better than DeWalt. It's under the TTI umbrella.
Okay.
Now, see, that's a salvation issue that no one else brings up. Yeshua's words were in red, not yellow.
Oh,
that's a good point.
Good point.
Good old King James.
I read the Blue Letter Bible. So I'm good to go with Ryobi.
Yeah. Or cobalt.
Yeah. Ooh, man, that backfired.
Mhm.
So, okay, back to some real stuff. Although that was as real as it gets. I will give you that. But so I saw you did a video of so one of my favorites is you have a nail and you're pounding this nail in and you're like, it can't be done. And then you go, well, if I had a nail gun, I could shine the light from the nail gun on my nail. Hilarious.
Yeah,
But
I remember.
that was
Yeah,
well done. But
thank you.
so anyway, back to real content here. This is hard hitting interview here. Okay. So you had a video about not liking being called a Christian, or you had a video of a guy just going off on crazy stuff, saying some pretty disturbing things and making comments about people. And so one of the things that comes up is, I think the easiest way to kind of understand the argument would be, if you don't want to be called a Christian, right? Well, I have people that come to me and they say, well, that just means Christ-like. And of course, the people telling me that are not following what Messiah followed. But the point is, they're saying, well, do you just want to be Christ-like? And yeah, like I was saying, the example would be, so like when the Catholic Church has priests that are doing the Fu Manchu, and people say, well, you're going to disassociate yourself from the Catholic religion because of that. And it's like, well, the religion doesn't teach that. That guy, I don't follow him. I follow, the religion, basically. So kind of your thoughts on that, because you had that video out that I had seen.
Yeah, I know what your video you're talking about, and it's really sad because not just that individual. There's been other individuals where, but yeah, with that individual, when you're cussing out another individual just because he disagrees with you, and when you talk about his family members, that's a despicable human being. You're a despicable human being. If we disagree, we disagree, and let's talk about it. But right when it goes into ad hominem attacks, it's not cool. I was actually on another live where it's a whole bunch of Christians where we're talking about the early church fathers, and they're actually, what they were bringing up was the eternal and everlasting differences. And I brought up, there was what was it, Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, Clement of Alexandria, Tertullian, Hippolytus, Origen, all these guys that basically diss the Trinity, and the entire thing is, shut up, Will, you're fat. It turned into that, like, and everyone's laughing, like, you're so fat. Now,
at least it was a strong attack.
Well, I don't care what you say about me, but it's just like, well, please answer the question. Like, sure, I'm fat. Okay, cool. I'm not the guy. I'm not your type. Is that it? I don't. Who knows?
Yeah. Now that you got that out of your system, now
yeah,
back to real life.
So but with stuff like this, I feel like it's getting more of the majority. If we disagree, it comes out with name callings. It's heretics and stuff like that. And when we look at the word, for instance, when we look at the word Muslim, I wouldn't identify as a Muslim. I don't think you guys would identify as a Muslim. But what is the definition of a Muslim? Someone who follows God. So, I follow God, you guys follow God, but you don't call yourself Muslim. Well, why? Because of what's carried on with the word Muslim. What the common term when we associate with Muslim, someone who is who follows the religion of Islam. That's more of a correct definition. So when we have Christianity now, it's either you are Catholic, Orthodox, or part of the Protestant Reformation, with Baptist, Calvinism, all that other
protesting Catholic.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're with that, though, you would all agree, though, on what early church fathers said at certain councils. So for me to say I'm a Christian, but I don't believe if you're good, you go to heaven, bad if you go to hell. I don't believe in one God, three persons of co-eternal, co-this and that, three omnis. I don't believe in Lucifer. I don't believe in the all these other things that mainstream Christianity believes in. I think it's what's easier is I'm Torah observant. Torah observant already basically has that niche of I follow the Torah and I do my best to follow the Torah.
Yeah.
That's it. Because right off rip, people will say, "Oh yeah, you're Torah observant. You follow the Torah." And I'll get some people like, "Oh, you follow it for salvation," and I have to correct them. No, I follow it because of salvation. Salvation comes through Yeshua, and I show my love and appreciation by listening to my Father's commands, just as my Mashiach did. So, but people already know, they already have that understanding of a Torah observer. Or sometimes I will say that I am messianic, but I believe in Yeshua. Then you already know what I believe. If I'm messianic, I'm basically a Jew, but I believe that Jesus is the Messiah. So that already answers your question. I don't celebrate Christmas or Easter. I already celebrate the feast days. I eat kosher. That already fills in everything instead of me saying I'm a Christian, but yada.
Then you have all those stipulations to what you're labeling. Yeah, it's just an inferior labeling system is what it amounts to.
And kind of going back to your point, like when people say, well, when one person does it wrong, doesn't mean we have to abandon the entire faith. True, but I feel like if we're seeing 90% of this as the majority, then that's what it basically is. Look, there are many people out there who are Christians, who are genuine good people, good-hearted people who truly love God. There absolutely there are.
Yeah,
but it's slim to none, and because of that, you can't identify with the minority. When we talk about like first century Judaism, or there was a belief of two powers in heaven, but that was the minority. When we think of Christians, we don't think of Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons, even though they'll call themselves Christians. Why? Because they're just the minority. They're not the whole grand scheme of things. So that's why I don't like being called a Christian, especially what I just see on TikTok of, hey, there's going to be 8 of us. We're going to invite one person who we disagree with, and we're going to call him names. We're going to cuss at him. We're going to interrupt him. We're going to talk about his family. That's just something I just don't want to be a part of.
Yeah. No. And it does seem like there is definitely a lot of people, a lot of hate sometimes that people want to throw at Torah pursuant, Torah observant kind of people. And I would say you do kind of have to walk a fine line. And if you're somebody listening to this and you're caught up in doing all this argument with some of these people, maybe sometimes you need to walk away from that for your own health, for your own sanity. Don't get stuck in those arguments, those circular arguments with people who you're probably not going to convince anything otherwise. But it's healthy to have conversations like this, like what we're doing together, and having normal conversations with like-minded people, and don't get bogged down all the time in the negative side of all this.
Yeah, and it is good to have discussions with people that don't think the way you do.
Sure.
Just realizing that there is a time and a place to shake the dust off your feet,
No, absolutely. And I there's a guy who's an Orthodox Christian. His name is Nico. I consider him a really good brother. There's another guy, Jehovah's Witness. His name is Bo on TikTok. I consider him a really good brother. There's a Catholic guy. His name is Mike. I consider him a brother. There's a Protestant, Mitch. So I have people who I disagree with, but they're good, genuine people who I like to hang out with, and we'll bounce ideas off each other. It's not just, I think too many people like to be in an echo chamber. They don't like to be challenged, but you should be challenged. If you believe in something, you should be able to explain why you believe in this.
Yeah.
And if you can't, well, you should think about it. there's a reason why we're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's an excellent point. So, another question I had for you is recently I saw that you had you went on a little field trip with another Torah observant person that some people out there might know, Nate. And I was just curious if you're planning on doing more of that, or was that just a one-off kind of thing?
So Nate followed me. I remember when he first followed me, and I was shocked. The guy's he's at 3.4 million right now. As of October 24th, he's at 3.4 million. And he's only following like 1,000 people, and I was one of them. I was so happy. So he's been on a live with me before, and I hit him up, and what's it called? I just let him know, like, hey, dude, if you need any plumbing done, I don't mind, helping you out, because he's off grid. His only income is from TikTok and YouTube and any type of sponsorship. So hey, I feel very blessed. Yaz has been amazing to me. So anything I can do for you. And he hit me up and he's like, hey, you know what? I got to pick your brain. I got to make my own water heater. So so I went out, we tested it out, and I didn't flood his house, so he said I can come back. So
Yeah,
good. I was excited about that. No, it was awesome. It was a blessing to hang out with him.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's pretty amazing, and I think he's got a channel that just runs that just has his little mower, and he's got a camera on it all the time, and then he has a thing for Minion, and so.
Hey, you guys don't want to know how much a month he makes from the lawnmower.
Okay, crazy.
You'll be sick. You'll be sick.
Yeah,
you're gonna run out and buy your own.
Yeah, well, because I've been in landscaping for a while, and about 4 years ago, the company I was working for, I brought in some robotic mowers, and we started exploring, how we could do that, and we did some setups, and I never even thought about putting a camera on one like that. It's pretty ingenious. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have one more? Where you go?
Nope.
Oh, and then I have one more question here. So something that I come across, and Jake comes across this, and some of the people in our fellowship come across, we run across a lot of homeless people, and just in your day to day, on street corners and things. And not that this topic is homeless, but it does make me think, when I was a part of regular church, I had like a contribution. I had a regular tithe. And so do you have any good ideas, or you have anything that works for you for how do you give back to people in poverty? I don't know if you have any thoughts you're willing to share about that, but it's just a personal question, something I'm curious about.
So this is something I've only told one other person, just to give them encouragement. I don't like to share this just because I don't want people to be like, I'm doing this for clout or anything like that. But, I'll be happy to share. So I get very concerned about the churches, or even other places that use the money for charity or anything like that. It's because you'll read in the news, oh, this person stole X amount of money. So what I do is, and I encourage a lot of people to do this. I live in a nice area, but there are some places by off the highway or whatever. I'll see someone, and I don't give them money, but whatever's around, I'll ask them, like, what are you hungry for? They'll tell me, like, oh, if there's a Subway right there, like, well, I like the the beef sandwich. I'll ask them what he wants on it. You want this? Okay. And then if there's a Walmart or somewhere, I'll, like, not to be weird, do you need maybe underwear or socks or maybe an undershirt? Do you need a good jacket or something? And I'll, they'll tell me, yes, I'm good on a jacket. Or you're like, you know what, I could use a warm one. And whatever they tell me they need. And, pant size, I'll ask for the pant size, tell me what shirt size. And I'll go. And I'll spend anywhere from, 75 to $100. And I'll be back in like 20 minutes. It's all in a big bag. And I say, here you go. Have a blessed day.
Mhm.
There's a verse in the Bible. I'm drawing a blank right now. I think it's in James. Where it basically, I'm paraphrasing, obviously. It basically says, don't just say like, be well, God is with you.
Mm-hmm.
Do something for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best way, because you don't necessarily want to give out money just because, you do see people will use it for bad causes. But I think a nice meal for the day, and that could possibly carry on for the next day, and some new clothes will just help revive them. And the reason why I don't talk about this or tell people is I see a lot of videos of people doing nice things, and I think they're doing it for clout, but I don't get on them, because even if they are doing it for clout, they're still doing something nice and honorable for someone else.
Mhm.
But with Yeshua, he talks about doing it in secret. Don't be like
Yeah.
the Pharisees that go on the corner who purposely dirty their face and make it look like they've been fasting for 10 days when they've only been fasting for one. Don't be like them where they do everything out in public. Do everything behind closed doors. Because at the end of the day, we want to be like Job, to where if Satan ever challenges God, he can say, look at my servant Will. He goes out with his money and he does this nice thing for this person, and then he's gone. He never sees this person again. This person has no idea who he is. He just drove a white Hyundai. That's all I know. And he's gone. And I think that is the best thing someone can do. Now, I'm not saying that you have to spend all this money. And if you're short on cash and you can only afford maybe a sandwich, there are McDonald's everywhere. You can spend $5 and get someone a fry.
Yeah, you could even give him your own sandwich. I've done that before. If I had an apple, a water bottle, whatever you got, especially here in Texas, it's hot and you see somebody on the side of the road. I'm in the trades as well, and I'll often have a ice chest full of water and ice in the summer, and I'm reaching and grabbing, a couple of water and Gatorade, and because that's clearly they're hot and thirsty. But something that I'm glad you said that, because something I've been kicking the tires on, and this is maybe people listening to this, maybe you've got some ideas on how to do this. I believe there is a gentleman that has a ministry somewhere on the East Coast who's Torah observant, and I'm trying to set up a conversation with him, because this is his whole thing. And he makes basically homeless care packages. And so in our group, it's something we've kind of kicked the tires on, about getting some bags together or something, and coming up with a list of items of things we can put in that bag, like hand wipes, and it would be nice to have some kind of a copy of the Torah even, or something like that to put in there. But chapstick, and maybe even like nail clippers, tweezers, just things that someone might need, and be able to have handy bags that you could have with you on your person at all times, and just be able to hand them out. Because I think especially we're coming into that season where we're going to see more, and I know where you live, it's cold, and and the people being out in the elements, and I do think we need to be mindful, and I think that we should be doing something for them. And you're right about giving them cash. I've definitely given people cash, and I know that that wasn't always the right thing, and it's better to give them more things that are practical, that they need, that they can use. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you.
Definitely. Yeah, it's kind of the same as Matt. It's I think and what you're saying, I think it's better to give something that's practical, something useful.
And if you are listening to this and you have some ideas, maybe you do something, please let us know. We'd love to, if you've got something that works for you. And, I've heard about people carrying like McDonald's gift cards in their wallet and being able to hand those out. And that's okay. But, McDonald's is terrible for you. So I will probably want to give them something better than McDonald's. But
you can get a salad. You can get a salad.
Yeah, you could. But still, it's food. So.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So if anybody has any ideas, we're open to definitely some suggestions and I think it's something good to talk to, if you're in a fellowship and a group of believers, it's a good conversation to have because we all have had those experiences. And if we don't talk about it, we've all been in, the other thing that I think is important when you're in those situations to listen and obey what Yah is telling you to do, because unfortunately for me, I've been in those situations and I've heard him say something that I didn't want to do and I didn't do it. And, because sometimes you're like, oh, I can't do that. And that's something that we have to work on, and being willing to do what he's asked us to do. And, he may have put somebody right in front of you, and it may even not be about that person. It may actually be about you. It may be some lesson he needs you to learn.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point you make about how it's sad that you can't necessarily trust an organization to work it out without skimming off the top or whatnot. And so it's kind of a sad state of affairs, but it's a fallen world, and that's what else are you going to expect, I guess.
That's actually one of the reasons why my parents, we ended up leaving one of the churches, because it got leaked while my dad was on the worship team. The one guy was dating the pastor's daughter, and they found out what this 18-year-old kid, I mean, from what I've heard from someone else, and I mean, it might be wrong, but it was almost 3 times the amount that my dad was making. And wow. It's not that it's not my, my dad is someone who doesn't care about the money, but it's like, why are we paying this kid 3 times more than what I'm getting paid when this money should be used for homelessness or something like that, where someone else can benefit, not some 18-year-old kid who can easily get a job anywhere to make money.
Yeah.
And I do recommend, like, if you're going to give, if you feel like you've got to give to a large organization, you should go to something like Charity Checker. There are several websites out there where you can check, and it'll break down like what percentage goes to administrative cost and what percentage actually goes to the people who need it. And unfortunately, so many of those organizations, the fat cats at the top, they're taking their piece, and then they give out, a little bit left over, and so that's the danger with some big organizations. But anyway,
and I think that's important too around feast days, because a lot of times, several of the feasts, you're told to not come empty-handed, and it's to bring things for others, and it's supposed to be a time of giving also.
Right, but Jesus fulfilled the law, so I don't have to. So
we don't have. He also fulfilled the marriage too, so we don't need to get married anymore.
Yeah.
Just
a little bit of humor. That's me.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Well, Jake, do you have any other questions?
No, I mean, it was good to have you on, and it was good to pick your brain about a few topics and get to know you a little better.
No, Will, do you have any other questions?
No questions. I want to thank you guys so much. I remember when I think it was Matt, when you first reached out to me, I was so happy and giddy, because I'm like, wow, I'm being recognized by one of the, big YouTube, TikTok people out there. You guys want to interview me? I was very happy, and just looking at my life before Torah and after, for someone who was very unhappy to where now, I'm 30 years old. I own my own house. I have a company, and my wife is a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah, that's awesome.
God has blessed me enough. I have 2 beautiful children, and it's to where the Torah has taken me. It's just I'm gonna cry if I keep talking. So go ahead.
Get him
No.
talking. Get him talking.
Yeah, no, that's a great testimony, and I think it's good for us to meet like this and talk and build community, because people can get in their own little camp and they don't realize that there's a lot of us out there, and at every given Shabbat there are millions of people around the world doing the same thing, reading the same scripture, having the same argument, trying to figure out the same thing you're figuring out, and there is great power in that, and it's amazing to be a part of that. And every Shabbat we get to do that. And, it's unfortunate that mainstream Christianity doesn't understand the beauty of the Torah portions and the beauty of the unity that's found in that, because here you have congregations like ours, which is, a home fellowship, to Messianic congregations, all kinds of different versions of the same thing, doing the same thing at the same time. So we're honored to meet you and to be able to talk to you about these things. And it's refreshing to see somebody young like yourself and doing so well. Jake is young too, but I'm not anymore.
I'm not as young as you.
Well, guys, I just turned 30.
12, so.
I just turned 30. I'm old. I'm already feeling in my joints. I'm like, hey, 30 is the new old. I don't know how old you guys are.
Yeah. No, that's right. But well, I think we're gonna wrap it up here, and if you'll stay on the line, we want to let this finish recording before we get out of it, and so we'll continue to talk to you for a minute. But Jake and I are gonna wrap it up, and this is Matt
and Jake
signing out, and we ask that you to go follow Wilwaukee. Go look him up in YouTube. Do you have a thing in YouTube? I thought I saw something in YouTube.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Well, there you go.
And how do they find you in YouTube?
I just look up Wilwaukee. It's like Milwaukee, but an upside down M.
Okay.
And
same thing.
Yep. And TikTok also.
Yeah. So go follow him. Go check out his content. And we appreciate your time today, and we hope you have a great evening.
Hey, thanks you guys too. Shalom.
Shalom.